And in the marketplace on Radio Jamaica 94 FM at this time, the Lions Club of Kingston presents Musical Delights, Sunday, February 8, 6 p.m. at Jamaica Pegasus Hotel. See Dwayne Stevenson, Wayne Armand, Jem Myers, George Nooks, Maria Myrie, Everton Pessoa live. Tickets, $9,000 and online at touchstonelink.com.
Marketplace is low-cost advertising on 94 FM. For items to be included in the Marketplace, call the marketing department in Kingston at 926-1100 tonight.
It's current, informative, educational, and it deals with the issues. It's Teacher's Time.
Coming up in Teacher's Time, Sunday, February 8th, 2026. Join us as we hear again from the JTA Cooperative Credit Union as they continue to inform you about borrowing wisely. The impact this can have on your financial well-being is well known. It is a must listen right here on the 94 for the next Teacher's Time program, Sunday, February 8th, 2026. Of course, all this within the 15-minute allotted time only on this station, Radio Jamaica 94 FM.
Teacher's Time, brought to you by the Jamaica Teachers Association, Unite and Serve, and the JTA Cooperative Credit Union Limited, serving our members, impacting lives positively.
The voice of the nation is Radio Jamaica. You're now listening to Emily Shields Talk with Substance on Hotline. Radio Jamaica, active for the good of our nation.
I'm going to take the time to now go through the statement from the Office of the DPP, which is dated the 5th of February 2026. On the 2nd of February 2026, the trial of the matter of Rex, and I'm told this is Jolyan, Jolyan, Silvera, was scheduled to commence before the Honorable Mr. Justice Brian Sykes, Chief Justice of the Island of Jamaica. On said date, Mr. Silvera was pleaded to the indictment charging him with 1, using a firearm to commit a felony, that is murder, that's count 1, count 2, murder of Mrs. Melissa Silvera. In response to the charges, Mr. Silvera pleaded, in respect of count 1, not guilty to using a firearm to commit a felony, that is murder, but guilty to manslaughter. In respect of count 2, he pleaded not guilty to murder, but guilty to manslaughter. Upon hearing the pleas entered by Mr. Silvera, the prosecution indicated to the court the defense would have to provide the basis on which it is asking the prosecution to accept a plea to the lesser offense of manslaughter, as it did not arise on the prosecution's case. The case was then part heard to the 3rd February 2026. On the 3rd February 2026, Mr. Silvera was repleaded on count 1 of the indictment, and to which he pleaded not guilty to using a firearm to commit a felony, that is murder, but guilty to using a firearm to commit a felony, that is manslaughter. On the night of the 2nd day of February 2026, the defense provided a statement authored and signed by Mr. Silvera to the prosecution. The statement in summary was that on the night of the 10th of November 2023, Mr. Silvera and his wife, the deceased, had an argument which got physical. He indicated that during the argument, she blamed him, as she always did, for the death of their young son. He went on to state that during the argument, she hurled several expletives at him and made derogatory statements about his sister and his mother, which he found to be provocative. He stated that during the argument, she made a comment about their children, which he found to be the final straw. And at that point, he lost control, discharged his firearm in her direction. He stated it was not his intention to hurt or kill her that night, and that having done so, he panicked and left the apartment. He stated that over the course of the days following her death, he thought about his children losing both parents and made the decision to not admit what he'd done. On the 3rd February 2026, the defense outlined the contents of the said statement to the court. In response, the prosecution made submissions on whether it was proper in law to accept the pleas entered by Mr. Silvera. The prosecution's case was based on circumstantial evidence and the ballistic findings. The prosecution had evidence of the following. 1. What occurred before Mrs. Silvera was killed. 2. What occurred after the deceased was killed. And 3. The subsequent events. The prosecution did not have evidence of what happened at the time Mrs. Silvera was killed. And that is crucial. So, it is the duty of the Crown to prove the offense for which the accused is charged, to the degree that the jury must feel sure of the guilt of the accused on the offense that he is being charged. In this case, what the prosecution is telling us, based on the statements they had and which they intended to put the people in the witness box, to bring them up to proof to what is in the statement, they had nothing that would amount to evidence of what happened at the time Mrs. Silvera was killed. Having heard Mr. Silvera's account of what took place when he shot the deceased, the prosecution took the decision, after assessing the evidence and subject to the court's approval, to accept the plea to the lesser offense of manslaughter for the following reasons. 1, there is no evidence in the prosecution's possession that can speak to what occurred at the residence when the deceased was shot and killed by the defendant. 2, having heard Mr. Silvera's account, the prosecution would not have been able to evidentially negative the partial defense of provocation raised by him. 3, further, the prosecution is cognizant of the fact that in light of the account given by Mr. Silvera, having raised the partial defense of provocation, the court would have a duty to direct the jury on the defense of provocation and the effect it would have had on the count of murder, that is to reduce it to manslaughter. And this is crucial. So you would have a situation, if the matter went to full trial, that the Crown is proceeding to prosecute a case for murder. But the defendant is raising, during cross-examination, and then later on his case, the head of provocation is popping up. If the head of provocation is popping up, in order for prosecution not even to be left, and I don't know how it couldn't be left, but the prosecution would have to negative provocation on its case. And to negative something, you cannot just say to the witness, he was never provoked. You cannot say to the witness, because there's no witness on the Crown's case who was present at the time of the killing. The only person you could say that to would be the defendant himself if he went in the witness box. And even if you suggest it to him, he's going to reject it. And that doesn't make your suggestion evidence. So the court would be duty bound in light of what could have unfolded at trial. The court would be duty bound to direct the jury on the partial defense of provocation. If the jury accepted provocation with the proper direction, then it would automatically mean that the verdict would be not guilty for murder, guilty of manslaughter. So in other words, where we are now, we could have got there at the end of the trial, as I said before. Mark you, we can have jury, and we've had it in many cases, that didn't decide the outcome based on the evidence. Yes, it could have happened. And it could be that even though provocation was live and directions are given on it, they could still return guilty for murder because everybody on what social media and all the channels devoted to it. But we need to determine if this is the sort of justice we want. And if we want it against the brown man, because the brown man is supposed to be some high society man, we have to check ourselves. But it seems to me that legally, there are obligations that are evident here. If the thing could properly arise and could properly be a partial defense to murder, the court was duty bound to consider it and to give directions on it to a jury who could get us to where we are now, as I said, except with the possibility of a reduction in the sentence. And the reduction in the sentence is not automatic because of the plea of guilty coming on the morning of trial, because it's a discretion by the judge based on a number of factors. But the prosecution tells us, having been guided by the authority of Gaynor and the Queen 2014 JMCA Crim 1, and that's a decision, I think, of former President, the late Justice Morrison, President of Appeal, at the time Justice of Appeal. The prosecution took the view that where Mr. Silvera gives an account of guilty plea that supports the offense in the case of manslaughter, the court can properly accept the plea. In Gaynor Hansen, the applicant pleaded guilty to murder but maintained he'd not intended to kill the deceased. The court, in dealing with the issue of murder/manslaughter, was of the view that the applicant's version did not support a murder conviction, and therefore the trial judge should not have accepted a plea to murder. The court was of the view that the manslaughter was the more appropriate offense. The prosecution was further guided by the authority Perlina Wright, a 1988 case, which was a case dealing with the fact that a judge in sentencing hearing should sentence the convict on the facts most favorable to the convict. Though it's a case dealing with sentencing, the principle is applicable to Silvera's case, in that neither the prosecution nor the court could ignore the version given by Mr. Silvera, especially in circumstances where the prosecution could not disprove the account given by him. So you may be wondering, yeah, what happened to all of the different accounts that we had before? All of those things can be used in sentencing, and the judge can use them to consider what percentage discount, if any, to be given in the circumstances. But it doesn't mean that the partial defense of provocation is not something the court would have to advert its mind to give direction to the jury, and the jury would be duty bound to consider and accept or reject it.